An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it and listened to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Good evening, everyone. This is our second night of Sesshin, Rohatsu Sesshin in 2020. And we have had a very nice, quiet day of zazen and practice and eating together, working together, and of course, primarily sitting together. So last night we spoke about grief and also about public virtue. And I also mentioned my favorite Buddhist story, A Christmas Carol. And not all the stories turn out so well as Ebenezer Scrooge's story. But here we are. And so I want to continue a little bit on that theme, not so much about grief, but about how we come beyond it and what our practice is, maybe I could say with grief, or the way in which we eventually come beyond it so that we are with it in a way that has ultimately deepened us and in some ways enriched our lives. So, you know, we've been through, as I mentioned last night, the great difficulty, 4 years of verbal abuse, verbal emotional abuse. When somebody is castigated publicly, we all are. And so we have been through that, and somehow the psyche has survived, let me say. But as people who are bodhisattvas, people in practice, we want not to feel that we are at the mercy of an abuser, but that we can come beyond that, that we can see past that, or we can see what is better. And so as bodhisattvas, it truly, it's truly deeply important that we step up to be able to be in our public sphere and be in our personal lives, in our lives together, in our families, in community, such that we are truly helping one another and that we are sustaining life. We are encouraging life. That is our very first precept. Very first precept, prohibitory is no killing life. But the positive view of that is sustaining and encouraging life. So Dogen Zenji, in his very last discourse, wrote about the very last discourse of the Buddha, of Shakyamuni Buddha. And these are the 8 They are the 8 realizations of a great one. And when this great one is mentioned, it is not, a great Buddha. It is any bodhisattva, every bodhisattva, all of those in practice. It is so rare for us to be able to encounter the Buddha Dharma. And so we are already great. We are sitting here together in the Zendo. We are here together online talking about the Buddha Dharma. And so we are already bodhisattvas engaged in the practice that Shakyamuni Buddha's wish is to bring us all beyond suffering. And that was deeply the matter of Shakyamuni Buddha's very last talk that is incorporated very strongly in Dogen Zenji's talk. I think at the time that Dogen Zenji wrote this, he was already ill, but I don't think he particularly had an inclination that he was dying. And so it became the very last one. It was written in early spring, I believe, and he died in August. So, sorry, I take it back. It was written in February, and then he died in August. So he never got a chance to write anything else, but it is, perhaps significant that he was writing about the Buddha's last discourse, and strongly and hugely quoting from the Buddha in his own discourse. So these 8 realizations of a great one, let's say 8 realizations of a bodhisattva, so that we don't imagine that we're not included in this, seem to me to be a way to recognize and sort of step up our own sense of virtue. We all know the virtues we've grown up with, charity, peace, goodness, benignity, long-suffering, mildness, faith, modesty, continency, and chastity. These are all virtues that I learned as a child, and you can probably recognize where they came from. But virtues are virtues. It doesn't matter to what religion they belong. They are virtues. And so these particular realizations are part of a deep practice for those who become senior, for those who have been in practice for a long time, who might recognize these practices to really enhance their lives. But when we say the word realization, we also mean to make something real. That is, to put it into practice. We might have an intellectual realization, which is just fine in this. But whatever it is, whatever kind of realization, the point is to put it into practice, to make it real. So we've heard all of these before. We actually have, but it seems to me that these practices belong to those who have truly undertaken the Dharma as their way of life, who have taken practice as sort of their end practice. Perhaps we've looked around at other religions, perhaps we've practiced other religions, and we discover ourselves still suffering. And then we come to the Dharma, and it is like our last practice, our final practice. And so we recognize a deep, deep truth in it that we cannot deny, And so we follow that path because we recognize it as a truth, not something distant from us. We recognize it because it is already in us. It is something that we already are. So again, these are practices we recognize. And again, I see them as ways that we can deepen our daily life practice and take us and those around us beyond the doldrums, the implications of grief that we have been through in these past years, and that we are still in by right of COVID. Today, more than 3,500 people have died. So we are in grave times, grave sadness. And so it is extremely important that those who have recognized the Buddha Dharma truly deepen and carry it for those in their midst. So this very first one is having few desires. Well, perhaps many of us have gotten older and we've gotten to a point where we have few desires. It may be the case. We certainly outgrow many of them. For young people have tremendous desires, perhaps to succeed with family and children and a house and 2 cars and a good job and all of those parts of the American dream that are not so prevalent any longer. But still, a desire to be happy, a desire to live well. And those are totally normal and correct. And when Dogen Zenji and the Buddha are talking about this, they are talking about worldly things that would move us away from our basic practice. Of course, we have some desires. Of course, we want some things. But the problem is if those desires truly take us away from the recognition of the basic dojo that we are in. As Inoue Kondo Roshi said, the body is your dojo. You are your dojo. So when the desires that we run after pull us away from that basic recognition and that basic practice, then we have, we're just a little bit off stream. We are not in the practice of the very first realization that enjoins us to a life in Dharma. Also, we can say that there's a question of sufficiency. We will come to enough in a little bit later because there are other practices that relate. But how much do we need? How much do we have to feel that our life is sufficient? Mostly it's not about things. Mostly it's about our care of one another, our relationships, and our basic spiritual practice. When we have few desires, we are not given to sorrow and emotional constraints and anxiety and all of the various things that pull us out of ourselves and sort of corrupt the peace of the day. The second one is being content. It's a difficult one, and certainly a little bit related to the desires to be content with what we have, to be content with the life that we have been given, and to be content also, I think, as we get older with the choices we have made. We might feel at times that, had we taken a different path, we might have done something else. Maybe we would have become a great dancer, or we might have become a great professor or something like that, and we didn't do that. Perhaps we lament that. But this, what we chose, was what we chose. And to truly be content with that, and to understand that whatever it was we chose is a life of service, and whatever else we might have chosen is a life of service. And to truly honor the life we have and the choices we made. We cannot go back. There are, of course, things we can continue to do and to study, which is also going to be, part of this. But to truly be content, important virtue. We all know people who are discontented. Most of us don't want to be around that. We don't want to feel that pull of discontent. It's painful. And so to recognize it when we see it and not get caught by discontent, to remember that what we have is the beauty of this life. No one else's life is like one's life. No one else is the same snowdrop. The third is enjoying the tranquility of nirvana. Leaving behind the noise and the clamor of the world and finding peace in daily life. I think this is not such an easy one for us to think about. It's for some of us in certain stages of our life. The question of, if we live in a household that is active, and there are children and teens, or many people, or whatever it is, very difficult to imagine or to think about nirvana, or to pull away from that life. But at the same time, I think that the Buddha and Dogen Zenji are both saying that if we are content with our life, no matter what situation we are in, there is a joy in it, in whatever noise happens to be around. And to enter that and to hold it and to allow it is also to be in a state of nirvana, to not run away from it, but to understand the peace and the acceptance of nirvana lived in this life. I know that in Japan, my teachers, they're always referred to death as entering nirvana. But the Buddha meant that the nirvana is now, that we are to live in that peace of nirvana. It is here now. The fourth is, it's translated in Dogen Zenji, being devoted to progress. But I think that progress is not the right word there. It is being devoted to progress. One's life, if spiritually lived well, should always be a life in which we progress in terms of our depth, in terms of our practice, in terms of the benefits that come toward us, to those around us, should always be progressive in that sense. And we should progress in terms of spiritual beauty. When we are making choices in our lives that can be very difficult, we have to ask whether this is a step that is a bit better than what we were before, what we were doing, and how our spiritual life is enhanced by the choice that we are making. So there's always a question of how we progress. And if we are living true to the heart, to our own heart, then that is how it should be. And sometimes we move, or we take a new job, or we simply change in some way, we do something different. It should be progressive in the sense of deepening and enriching our lives. It should always be that. No backward steps in that sense. No falling back into a life of desire and need and grasping. Allow those changes to be something of enhancement. That is true expression of Buddha. So being devoted to that also is the question of a lifelong devotion to that practice. For our lifelong time, we notice that in our choices. We notice that in our daily life. And we are devoted to that because we are on the progressive road of being Buddha. And it should always be that way. So the fifth is not neglecting mindfulness. Honoring right mindfulness in the Eightfold Path. Not to lose sight of the Dharma. So today, these are all very practical kinds of things. These are not far esoteric. All that we are saying are things that can be practiced and are life-enhancing. So today, when we were practicing Oryoki, we reminded ourselves together that Oryoki is a two-handed practice, that we always use two hands to pick up the spoon and place it in the bowl, and two hands to pick up the bowl, and two hands to do whatever it is we do. And there is a deep mindfulness then in that practice, which is a body practice that enriches the body, enriches the sense of presence, deepens the sense of presence, and honors the true ceremony of Oryoki practice. So noticing those kinds of practices in our lives that we can take into our life is the practical side of that. There must be a practical side, praxis. There must be praxis built into everything that the Buddha suggests, that he not just suggests, but enjoins us to undertake. It's essential that it be that. The sixth is practicing meditation. Well, this is abiding. Dogen Zenji calls it abiding in the Dharma undisturbed. That's what Zazen is for him, to us. Abiding undisturbed. And in a great sense, that is the case. We have all kinds of things that come up, as we mentioned last night, the ghosts of Christmas past and the ghosts of Christmas present and the ghosts of Christmas future all come up for us like they did for Ebenezer Scrooge. And so these may come up for us in the mind, but if we look at the body is sitting there completely undisturbed. We are in practice undisturbed. And as Inoue Roshi reminded us the other night, what is in front of us is the reality. It's the only reality. This is the reality. Zazen is the reality. Where you are with your body on the cushion is the only reality. It's not the dream of being in Zanzibar that enters the thoughts as we are sitting. It's being right there. So this practice of meditation, of Zazen, is extremely important, one of our deepest practices. And Shakyamuni Buddha says, when you achieve meditation, your heart is not in turmoil or your mind is scattered. And then he talks about how we take care of water in a pond. And we notice whether there are leaks in the pond, or maybe we've got a dripping faucet, to bring it back to modern times. And when we have that kind of leak of water, we must repair it. We cannot allow that kind of leakage to happen. And so that same kind of practice must be in our commitment to meditation. We cannot allow that leakage to go on. We cannot allow the stretch of time to go on without bringing ourselves to the cushion. We have to get there. We can't dream that we meditated and have that be actual meditation. We can't even listen to a Dharma talk and say that we've been practicing Zazen. We have to do it. We have to get onto the cushion. And sometimes that's very hard. And yet, the failure to do it is to disappoint ourselves regularly. And it's to, again, distance ourselves from those earlier practices that we mentioned, to distance ourselves from that commitment. To move away from the desires, to be content, to enjoy tranquility, to be devoted to progress, the effort to progress. The seventh is wise discernment. So wise discernment, of course, is the practice of interiority, of assessing ourselves, of looking inward and sorting out how we are, sorting out what decision we might make, to self-examine how we are and to apply the wisdom of these practices to our daily life. Dogen Zenji speaks about wise discernment as a light coming within, shining a light within. This particular season is the season of light. We have in many traditions light. We have Hanukkah next week, I believe. We have the light of Christmas. We have lights going out everywhere. People putting lights out, Christmas lights out, because of the difficulties of COVID and the struggles that we are having. Homes are decorated with lights to encourage people to continue. And we have the Buddha's awakening, the light of the morning star, and then the light infusing the entire body and mind of the Buddha with awakening. So this season of light is a kind of discernment, to think of light shining within as wise discernment. I know that certainly in times past, I have driven past these houses with all these lights on and thought, oh my goodness, look at all the electricity you're burning. And oh, it just seemed so gross at some times. And I have to say that this year I'm absolutely delighting in those Christmas lights. I think that they are celebrating and encouraging, and they are not so much about a specific religious Christmas, but about that we must encourage one another during such dark times. So this wise discernment is something extremely important that we practice as we, those of us elders who have to encourage youth today and help them. I can't imagine how difficult it is to be a young person right now, to be locked at home and not able to engage fully with friends in a time of personal and social development, when kids should be out dating and dancing and being together, and to not be able to do that without fear of bringing the virus home to their families. Worldwide, we have this. It is not just our own children, but worldwide. They are all in this together. And it's a very sad time. We feel this grief about it. So that is the seventh, wise discernment. And the eighth is the most difficult. Certainly for me, maybe for many of us, I don't know. But the eighth is called not playing around with theories and opinions. Oh, it's so difficult right now. As we talk politically, as we talk about this and that, as we imagine what possibilities they are, as we bring up an opinion that is related to something going on somewhere, and theories about what really is going on. So not playing around with theories and opinions. And we have been talking about that in our study of A Blueprint of Enlightenment, about not holding opinions and how difficult that is. But when we are holding opinions, we are engaging in duality. And so if we are doing that, we should know what we are doing. We should understand what it is we are doing, engaging in judgment. Very difficult. It's extremely difficult right now. And so the Buddha's words on this: if your mind plays around with all kinds of theories and opinions, it will be confused and in disorder, and though you have left home to become a monk, you have still not realized liberation. Quickly abandon your disordered mind and your playing around with your theories and notions. Most difficult, most difficult. Those were the Buddha's last sermon. The scripture of the Buddha's last teachings are embedded and quoted strongly in Dogen Zenji's last teachings. And I picked this up tonight at this point, not that I'm offering this as my last teachings. I'm not meaning it in this way at all. But I feel that when someone is coming to their end life, such as the Buddha or Dogen, they give their heart, their deepest wish for us, their deepest spiritual wish that we would take up these teachings and make them manifest, make them real, to be realized. And it seems to me the Buddha was saying, look, I gave you everything. I gave you so many words. I gave you so many teachings. And Dogen was saying, I gave you so many teachings. I gave you so many chapters of Shobogenzo, 1,200 pages of Shobogenzo. Now this is toward the end. Now please listen to these, because these must be the most important. These practices will take you beyond suffering. And because we practice those around us are influenced in a world that is in deep hunger and need of influence for the good. And also, there are 8, and if we square 8, we get to 64. Because when you combine each of them, you get to 64 practices, 64 magnificent appearances in the world. And then there are billions beyond that when they are practiced in various aspects of life and in daily encounters. So you can find these in the very last chapter of Shobogenzo, chapter 96, Hachidai Ningaku. So it's a time for us to undertake virtuous practice, to consciously undertake virtuous practice in order to bring some remedial content, remedial practice, remedial life into the world that we are in. So I deeply appreciate that we are here. We are doing this. We are in Sesshin. All of you are sitting, we are all sitting together. So we have certainly undertaken, these practices as we are in the Sesshin. So it isn't as though we are distant from them. We have come together, we've left the desires behind, we are facing a wall that has no candy on it. There's no treats on the wall, there's just the wall. And so there that is. And we are deeply content as we are in the simplicity of this practice. And we are content and deeply appreciative of the food we are given. And we experience certainly moments of tranquility as we sit together. And this practice is surely an aspect of the progress of our spiritual life. And so we do not neglect mindfulness as we engage in this daily practice. We are engaged in mindfulness. And we are doing meditation. We are practicing meditation. And within that meditation is the wise discernment that is the seed within us that is moving around and opening us by right of our sitting through the periods that we sit, opening us to be able to see clearly. And we're doing our best not to engage in theories and opinions. But we don't have a lot of time for that while we are on the cushion. It's not so much about that at all. So we have an opportunity to clear even that out, to release ourselves from the daily news and the various political opinions that we are encountering every day. So, my friends, beginning tomorrow and the day after, we don't know what day it is anymore because we are here in a monastic cocoon right now. So we do not know what day. We know that yesterday was practice and today was another day of practice, and tomorrow and the day after will be silent. So there will be no Dharma talk, but we will be on for all the periods of practice. And so we encourage you to please sit zazen with us. Very important to us to sense the reach that we feel into the community. We are well aware that you are there practicing together. And so we will open the channel according to the schedule, and we completely encourage you to be on with us. So thank you very much for your practice, deep appreciation. And together we will, as a Sangha and as people in the world, we will come through and spread the Buddha Dharma and find a way to be joyful in the world. So beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassed, I vow to become it. Thank you, everyone. It's time for Kinhin.